Welcome to Black, Red, and Blue. I'm AJ. Joined with me, as always, is Steve. So, before we start today, I just wanted to remind people that this is not it, at least for us. During the off season, we're both planning to still push out some content. For instance, you have to have rank list. Like we have to do like a tier list, of course, right? But I think really more importantly, I think one of the biggest things coming this off season is the expansion draft. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to get a player plucked from us, but it's a potential. The big question is, like, who do you protect? Obviously, this is going to be a really fun conversation because I think everybody's list is going to be different.
Oh, yeah.
So stay tuned. Hopefully we'll hit that. I'm not... Actually, Steve, do you know when the expansion draft is by any chance?
I think it's December 11th. So in the next couple weeks or so, we'll have some new information about that. But I'm really looking forward to diving into this whole draft process. It's actually like 4 events in one for the MLS, and each part builds on it's like watching Star Wars. Each part builds on another, but then there's a prequel that happens and it affects everything else. It's super cool.
Yeah, so just stay tuned for that. At least that's something exciting, unlike, unfortunately, this game.
Oh, boy.
Steve, I was looking at this game, and, you know, we knew we weren't going to be in the playoffs, but this is one of those things that you want to go into the offseason for next, 3 months or whatever it is, and you want to say, hey, I'm excited about insert whatever. Tell me, Steve, based on this game, give me one thing you're excited about. Other than Berkey, that's low-hanging fruit.
The Germans. I'm going to try some sauerkraut this winter, just in honor of those fabulous German bastards on our team.
You haven't had sauerkraut before?
No, man. I'm Italian. You having no sauerkraut?
Oh, man.
Well, having no fucking schnitzel? What are you talking about?
Yeah, unfortunately, this was one of those games that it just wasn't really exciting. I know a lot of people were saying that our back pair was going to be Kessler and Nilsson, but yeah, that was not good. I think that's a really good place to start. What did you see when you were watching this?
Man, I saw a back line that was really bad. It was like, to me, I had flashbacks of Marcanic getting burned, and it was just a mess back there. I don't know why we didn't have Yarrow starting. We just signed him to an extension. Why not have him out there? Why it was awful. I also saw a head coach that was still showing us that using substitutions is just not in his wheelhouse, using appropriate timing and putting those pairings out there. It was that Kessler, Horn, and Nilsson back line was just Swiss cheese last night. It was like, we watched the highlights, and it was just, as soon as Minnesota got loose, it was over. Also saw that my man Durkin, my sweet Durkin, his presence not out there is something else. Like, you got to have him out there. Lubin looked lost without him, without his Boo Bear.
Yeah, we'll talk about Hackworth in a minute, but yeah, the back pair, I'll be honest, like, they seemed unbelievably porous.
Right.
There was a poor marking. Like 2 minutes in, there was the possible PK. And honestly, Kessler got beat. Like, it was just a foot race, and he got beat. And there's really no excuse for it. I mean, I get it. Sometimes things like that happens. But, Nilsson had the exact same thing happen to him, but that one actually led to a goal. Like, you can't have center backs do that. You can't get beat on the run back. You at least have to do something to interfere with what the attacker is doing. You can't just give him a clean shot, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah,
and then really... Horn was not pairing well either.
No, it really seemed like Kessler was just, like you say, beat on the run back constantly. As soon as Daddy Longlegs there had to get in a foot race with another person, he just was burned the entire night. And that, I mean, you can see it led to several goals just off of him alone. And it was not great.
Yeah, and one thing I would have to rewatch and kind of look at is, why were they getting burned? Were they just not turning back quick enough? Are they just that slow? Was it just when one was pushing forward, was one not almost kind of like a double pivot, like were they not covering each other well?
Right.
We actually had, when you look at our line of first defensive action, we actually played a relatively high line. I don't know, maybe the line was just too high for these guys. Like with Hackworth, he definitely has had more of kind of a mid block compared to Bradley Carnell's high block. This looked a little bit more like a Carnell first action line, to be honest. And I just wonder, is it too high for these guys? We have definitely missed Parker since he left. I'm sorry, we just have. I mean, Kessler is pretty similar in a lot of ways, but I personally think Parker's better. And with Horn, he did not have a good game. I don't know. It just wasn't good. So we were mentioning about Hackworth and substitution. What were you talking about?
Well, just that when we look at the substitution times, like the substitution pairings out there, ever since he's came on as the interim head coach, we've communicated constantly that the substitution timings seem weird. They're not kind of standard, and when they do happen, they don't seem to happen in a run of play to kind of satisfy what's going on at the time. And we saw that again last night, that you're looking at the substitution times, we're definitely at weird times. And I just don't know if he wants, I think it goes back to our conversation where because he's not sure if he's going to be the head coach, he doesn't feel comfortable putting his own stamp on what he's going to do right now. And since he's come out and actually said he wants to be the head coach, maybe this is his way of saying like, yeah, if you don't want to give me the position, I'm not going to give you all of my cards, which is totally strange. And the substitution timings last night seem weird. Like we've got a 71st minute, in the 88th minute. You only made a couple substitutions last night. And then why are we not seeing, why did we not see either Reed or Yarrow out there last night? And they were on the bench and healthy. And we wind up giving up that fourth goal late that one of those guys with fresh legs might have prevented. It wouldn't have mattered if we would have lost the match, but it wouldn't have been near that bad. I don't know.
This is the hard part with substitutions, and this is where I think coaches are thinking is, one, when you have players out there, they're kind of warmed up, their head is in the game. I think there's something about keeping people out there because they kind of get their grooves going, and we see that all the time, especially with attacking players, Now, the problem is that usually your starting 11 are your best players. So anybody you bring on have the benefit of having fresh legs, energy, and stuff like that. But typically they're not as good as the players you have out there. So I think sometimes head coaches see that and maybe they're a little gun shy about putting a quote unquote lesser player out there. But I would make the argument is, dude, it's an eye test, right? He's on the field. He should have saw it wasn't working.
Right.
Like we weren't getting really through the midfield. There was like no tack. We had a few chances here or there, but it was a pretty toothless attack for the most part. It wasn't working. Your defensive line didn't look good. It wasn't working. At some point, when do you say, hey, the definition of insanity is what? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. At some point, you got to say, hey, we need to do a substitution here. We need to see what these guys can maybe do. Like, maybe you do take out Toy Shirt and put Alm in.
Right.
Okay. Although, like, right, Toy Shirt has, like, is a huge goal scorer for us. So, like, do you really want to take him out? Maybe. But it wasn't working. So, like, I don't know. Was it just hopeful thinking? Maybe.
So do you get the impression that, again, Hackworth or the team or whatever, you think that they were playing for the win or just playing to stop, playing to just be done with the season? Like, do you think with the lineup, the 4-4-2, the lineup altogether, the substitutions, the game of flow, did you get the impression that the team was actually gunning for a win for the last game of the season, or do you think that they were just playing to play out?
I mean, I think they always want to win. I really, really do. I think what the formation we saw here was more seeing what we have. And what I mean by that is I kind of wonder, did they really think that this formation, this style was actually going to be good for Minnesota, or was this a test run? Because like one of the big questions that you and I and the team would have is that we have Betcher, who is a great finisher. He gets in the right positions. I still think Klaus has more athletic talent, but we've also had issues with Klaus, especially when he doesn't have a second a second striker with him and stuff like that. So I think they wanted to see what would this 4-4-2 look like with two strikers. I think that's what their primary goal was, is seeing, hey, is this it? And then I think they wanted to see what Nilsson and Kessler look like, what Horn and Totland look like. I think they were putting out the formation and lineup, except for Durkin, of course, that they are anticipating using next year.
So what you've seen, do you think that Kessler, Betcher, and Klaus are a good pairing up top? I know you've said you've wanted to see that. You've seen it for a couple games now. Do you think that Betcher and Klaus should be the top of that 4-4-2? Or should we go for a 4-2-3-1 with Klaus down and Betcher as at 9?
You know, this really stinks. I'll be honest. When we looked the best was when we had the 4-2-3-1, and we had Toy Shirt in the middle, and then we had on the left Hartle, and then somebody on the right wing, whether it was Thor or somebody like that. I think that's when we honestly look best, because you need a traditional striker, and Toy Shirt in that kind of attacking mid/second striker role he fits really well there. I don't necessarily like him on the right wing. Hartle on that kind of left wing slash, a little bit more mid. I think that's a great pairing. Honestly, I think if you truly, I hate to say this, and I know I'm going to get hate for this, but I love Klaus. I think he's a great player, but I think he sits.
You know what? Based on what you were saying, I can kind of get a feel from what you were thinking there. Now, right after the season ends, there is a trade freeze, but right before the expansion draft, they open up trading. Do you think that we can flip Klaus for, say, a stronger center back somewhere? Do you think there's another team that's needing a striker, that they have a good center back that we could trade him for? Since we've got some strikers, we've got some of those other players, like, does he have value there? Since we're just going to be talking about sitting our second DP signing, if we're going to be sitting him, why not get something for him?
Because nobody would take that salary.
Yeah, he doesn't have value. I
mean, let me ask you this. Pretend Klaus was on, I don't know, New England, right? And New England said, hey, do you guys want Klaus with that salary? Would you take it?
Well, they got Benteke. I mean, there's no way they're going. They don't need that. Yeah. But I know what you're saying, though. But
I'm saying, like, if they were trading him to us, would you want Klaus on your team for that kind of salary?
If there is a trade like we got for Parker, where we're paying half the salary, I'm sure that another team might take that. If there's half the salary out there, we're not going to be doing that. But I'm just saying, like, I don't know, like his ball handling is so good. Like, you see him out there, he's got that finishing, but like he seems to have the yips. I know we're not supposed to say that word, but he seems to have them right now. And if we're going to be sitting a cat that's getting all that money, what's the point?
Right. Well, and the other thing is you said trading for center back. So let's say you did that. The problem is you have Betcher, and Betcher did have some kind of blah games. Let's be honest. But the thing is what do you do if he gets hurt? Who takes that role? Thor? I mean, we don't have a really strong player to go up there, so I think you need Klaus. Now, I'm going to challenge you with something else to kind of shift a little bit. My thing is I think Hackworth is a brilliant guy. I do. I really think he's a super smart guy. I think he's very well respected, but he's very plain. He doesn't seem to have a very creative plan of attack, game day coach. I just don't know if he's a very good game day coach. I think behind the scenes, maybe strategizing, but for the actual game day, I don't think he's there. So the thing is, we're talking about Klaus and all that. I just think he's poorly utilized. Obviously, Klaus was frustrated with Hackworth a couple games ago when he was coming off the field. He's like, what do you want me to play? The defensive midfielder or the striker? Like, obviously, they're doing something wrong with Klaus, 100%. So I don't know if this is all just Klaus, let's be honest.
Right.
So the question is if we get a coach that's a little bit more of a game day coach, could they figure out Klaus and Betcher together?
Right. But we got to get that. I like that idea. We got to get a coach that can actually know what he's doing with his players. And I can't say that Hackworth is it. You and I have been saying for the last 4 weeks or so that Hackworth shouldn't be the head coach. And you look at what a lot of the fans responded whenever they beat Kansas City. I kind of said, I think that was like his coronation. All the fans were all about it. Well, if you look at what happened last night, all of a sudden, a lot of people are saying, this guy's a bum. Well, it's like you and I have been seeing that for the last couple of weeks or so. And I think if we're able to get a coach that knows players, then yeah. I mean, it's like Hackworth was the principal, the coach. He was in charge of the coaching. And it's kind of like you can coach a coach, but can you coach players? You know, it sounds like he's just really unable to. And I hope he's not the head coach for this team.
And the other thing, too, is I was kind of wondering this, too. Obviously, this team was designed for a press. That's why we brought Bradley Carnell in. That's why we brought the players we did in. And it's obvious that Hackworth has changed to more of a high press to a mid-high to mid-press or mid-block. And we're just not pressing the same. We're not nearly as aggressive as we were. I kind of wonder, is Lutz looking at this and being like, hey, man, like, I created a pressing team here. What are you doing here? Right. Or maybe this is Lutz's design. Maybe he said, you know, maybe we were going to be a pressing team to start with, and then we would start to evolve into more of a possession team. Like, notice, back in the day, right, like you would see the center backs maybe pass it around a couple times, and then we would give it to one of our wing backs, and then they would progress it up the field. Now, how many times do you see him pass back to Berkey, pass back to the center backs? And it's like 2 minutes of just, you know, keep away before they try to push it forward. It's a very safe approach, very possession-oriented type of build-up. It's different, except when Leuven gets it and then he just like skies it for like a long ball, like a 10 attempt, which is another issue in itself. Leuven, by the way, did not have a great game. Not at all.
Yeah, so I saw that too. So, you know, with your comment about like the team being pressed and now being kind of like that little block, you know, if we can take Lutz at his word that this is about what kind of team he wants, which, by the way, I think we can because he's been kind of true to his word. He is very, very, very sure that this is still a pressing organization. Like, this is still a high press organization. City 2 still utilizes it. The academy teams utilize it. So I imagine Lutz still wants this team to be high press. And if Hackworth can't do it, won't do it, he can't see that vision. You, as that head administrator of the team, you have to move on to another person that can fill your vision. And if this is what we're talking about, the team's vision is this, Hackworth isn't fulfilling it, then you have to find someone that will. So I guess if we're going with that route, that we're in a pretty good position that we know that Hackworth won't be the head coach this year because the team isn't looking like that high press, high risk type team, and like we had at the very beginning of last year.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and you know, part of it too is, and I've said this before, is I really wonder what it's going to look like looking for a head coach, especially since we're kind of in an offset league where we're over the summer, where a lot of leagues are over the winter. So do we have to look for people who got fired early? Or do we look for people who haven't coached for, you know, however long? Are we looking at other MLS teams? Are we looking at assistant coaches?
No.
You know, so AKA promotion, and it's a little bit of a, you know, toss of the dice, and you say, well, like, this guy seems smart, but he hasn't actually been a head coach. I bet you that's what ends up happening here.
I hope not, because that's what we got with Carnell. We got an assistant coach that we chucked dice at and turned out to be Snake Eyes. So, God, I hope that, I don't know. You know, I looked at what they're doing in Columbus, and this Nagby in Columbus is an amazing head coach. Last night they had a passing sequence that led to a goal that was over 18 passes back and forth, and it was all it was amazing. And that's almost like when you look at like Whitey ball from like the 80s. It's like that small ball, and that seems to be what he's doing over there, where it's like doing those very, very small things right. I wonder if we need like a Bad News Bears type head coach to come in and like tape toilet paper to the kid's hand, the player's feet, and like make them, you know, think of all like those little league type coaches that come in and make the kids do those weird things. Like, do we need to go back to something like that? We need a head coach that can actually lead these guys. I think that's the one thing we're missing at this point. It's probably that very solid head coach that won't get fired after a year and a half.
Mark my words. I think I'm going to go on the record and say I am about 80% certain we will end up getting some not assistant head coach, but like assistant coach.
Well, if we do, I hope it's not from the MLS. I hope if we do get an assistant coach that it's from another league that has a lot of success. I hope it's not an MLS assistant coach, because I can't imagine that. You look at all the very successful coaches in the MLS, and how many of them were like assistant coaches just a year or two ago. And God, I hope we don't do this. I mean, at least we're not Chicago.
I think there's a reasonable chance of that. Just saying.
Well, Jesus, that wouldn't be great.
No. Well, I mean, we're going to see. I mean, the good thing is like MLS usually starts at the end of February, early March, something like that. So, like, realistically, you know, the MLS season ends. When is it? It's the December. It's like December 4th or 5th or something like that. You know, we need to start shopping for the coach now, because you need time to kind of build up a strategy. They need to kind of learn the players. They need to start looking at film, everything. So hopefully this happens sooner than later. But anyways, we kind of beat that horse dead and then took the carcass and beat it some more. But yeah, what else you got?
You know what? I saw some. You want to do a couple rounds of the goal or no goal? I saw some hot
goal
takes
or no
this morning.
Goal. Okay, let's do this. My favorite.
See. All right, let's see.
Hot take it.
John Love on Twitter says, Durkin is everywhere. MLS commentators. Durkin's poor discipline is why they get burned. Durkin, injured. MLS commentators. This team misses the ground that Durkin covers. They're exposed without him. Both can be true at times, just annoying to hear. Goal or no goal?
Well, anything MLS commentator says, usually I ignore, so. But no, Durkin, yeah, he can get burned, but he really does provide a lot more stability in the central midfield or center, you know.
He covers so much ground. He averages like 7 miles a game.
It's nuts. Yeah, I think he makes a huge difference. And I'm sorry, Watts is a poor replacement for him, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for a late game sub, sure, but as a starter, no. Sorry.
Right. Thomas Welch also on Twitter says, this team just cannot compete with anyone defensively, and it hasn't been able to since its genesis. Goal or no goal? The team cannot compete with anyone defensively.
I would probably say let's say he kind of snuck in a goal on this one. You know, we kind of looked up the stats here. This year, I think I said we are 23rd as far as like goals given up out of all the teams. That's in basically the bottom third. And last year we were about like middle of the pack. We were 14th. Now our goal differential was so good because we were third as far as goals for. So that really made the goal differential. But I would say, okay, fine, we'll give him a goal, you know,
right
from top of the box, long range.
How about another one from Reddit? Terrible TK said it just feels like their entire attack is faster than any of our backline. Combine that with how high up we play our defense, it feels like it's a miracle this game isn't uglier already. And that was during the match last night. It feels like their entire attack is faster than any of our backline.
Well, I'm going to have to say goal because that's exactly kind of what we were saying, right?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, they were torching us. I would love to see their average speed. Like I've seen MLS track miles per hour, and then based on how fast we're able to get back to, like that's some real deep analytics stuff that I'm sure we can cover in some episodes this winter, is like how porous was our defense towards like really great competitors. You know, I think we got to look at the matches that we played against playoff teams, and then we can see how we fared against them, how many losses we have, and then how fast those guys were, because those are the teams that we're going to be gunning for next year. Not San Jose, not Nashville. We're gunning for those playoff teams currently, and we got to see what the difference is there.
Yeah, and you know we're very pessimistic here, but there was a stat, I think this was a couple weeks ago, that looked at once we got our German players, Teuscher and Hartl, and not including the Leagues Cup, I believe it was, that if we took that representative time period, if you extend it across the whole season, we would have averaged about 56 points.
Right.
Which would have put us probably in first, maybe second. Now, if somebody's looking at the table and they're saying, well, somebody's higher than 56 points. Yeah, but the thing is the more points we get, we're taking away from somebody else, right? There's only so many points that a conference can earn. So I think we would have been in first place if that stat would have held. So I think we have some good things here. I just think we need to look back at it. Like, for instance, we were kind of talking, I feel like when we were doing the 4-2-3-1 setup with Betcher up top, Teuscher in the middle as attacking mid, et cetera, like we were kind of firing on most of the cylinders, at least, if not all cylinders. Like we actually looked pretty good, to be honest.
It seems like for a little while we were.
I don't know. I think we have some things that we could look forward to as well.
Yeah. Oh no. I don't think I don't know so much we're pessimistic. I just think we're realists. Like we are able to look at this from a fan's perspective, but also kind of take a step back and say, this is the reality of the situation. You know, we don't have to be Debbie Downers, but we're also not homers. Like we're fans, and we can see like what we are right now is a lot better than where we were in May of this year. You know, it started falling apart. I as you can see, I've got the scorecards from this year, and it's like we drew our very first game, we won our second game, and then it all started falling apart. And we're in a better place now than we were. Well, let's just say it. This time last year, we were in the playoffs, but we got knocked out by a very, very, very bad Kansas City team. And we definitely were not in a great place at this time last year. So I think we're in a better place than we were because we got a lot of better players. And, you know, I think we have more to look forward to. I think last year we were just kind of like wiping our brow, like, whew, that was a good first season. And now we're, you know, I think we got the rose-colored glasses knocked off, and we're able to say, okay, you know, we're probably going to be a fourth, fifth place team next year, and let's see how we can make sure that can happen, you know?
Yeah, and let's be honest, too. Like, this game looked really bad, but Minnesota's actually firing on all cylinders. Like, they've had a one heck of a run. I don't know if you heard during the telecast, but they said in 450 minutes, they hadn't given up a goal.
Yeah.
We were first goal in 450 minutes.
And it was a good goal.
Holy moly. Holy moly. Like,
it wasn't a cheap goal. It was, Hartl had a good-ass goal there. So, and by the way, like, St. Clair, their goalie, is a world-class goalie. He's our goalkeeper. He's not just some bum that gets lucky. So we put it past them, and let's see. Yeah, right now Minnesota jumped up to sixth place, so they won't have to be playing in that wild card game. So they are a solid team. So we got beat by a very solid team that has a good head coach that has everything in place, and we're currently missing that. So.
Yep. So I think the good thing about this off season is we're going to have a lot of things to talk about, a lot of things to kind of dig in. I think it's going to be pretty exciting, honestly. But before we wrap up our last game episode for 2024, any lingering thoughts?
I want to say that we're finishing in 12th place on the standings, 37 points. Ninth place was 47 points. We were 3 wins and a draw away from playoff contention, if we're just looking at this right now. So we can spend the season trying to figure out those game mirror. We had 27 points lost from a winning position. Think about that. Think about that. We had 9 games in which we lost or drew that we were winning. All we needed to pick up was 1/3 of those. If we would have picked up just 1/3 of those games that we lost, we would be in the playoffs right now. Then we can look at what were the easiest ones we could have gotten. Would it have been in Miami where we were winning that game twice and we could have won that game? Think about all those games that we scored 1 or 0 goals that we could have won. And then what could that difference have been? So I do like the MLS. As we're learning more about this, I dig 3 games. Essentially, 3 games separates us from being in the playoffs. In the MLS, it could be 5-6 series, and this is 3 solid games. That's amazing to think back. A handful of games, and we would be in the playoffs if they would have gone just a little bit different. I think that's my lingering thought from the rest of this postseason. Now it's going to be what can we do to assure that we're not looking at this same kind of thing next year?
Honestly, this is a low-hanging fruit, but it's the fact that we have Carter Toyshirt. Hopefully Celio comes back at least close to what he was before he got injured. Yep. I mean, as John Lazale would say, that's practically like getting a new player when they come off of injury. So, I mean, it's kind of true. So, I mean, we have a much better team, at least on paper. We just need the coaching to fit it. So,
and then also it's do you look at? I think I like our postseason coming up because looking at the team we have now, the team we started with, were there some pretty big misses by Lutz from players and coaches? Did we really miss out on a lot of really good players, and now we're having to play catch up, or was it just bad luck this year with injuries? Once Klaus went down again, Seal went down, all we had we're looking at Thor, you're our savior, pick us up, and he's I can't do it. But now we're seeing Lutz actually understands other stuff, and I'm just wondering did we miss out on some players, but now we're picking up, now we're seeing where we lost, or was it we're creating something from whole cloth here, and then this is the best we can do?
Yeah, I just think it's just because the transfer window is in such an awkward place of the season. I mean, it's around 2/3 of the way into the season. So it's even at this off season when they actually get to sit down and take a month to kind of mull over, hey, what do we actually have here? Well, guess what? There's a winter transfer window, but that's mid-season for a lot of teams, and there's a lot of players on contracts, so you can't get free agents. It's not ideal for the MLS, unfortunately.
Right. So are you going to watch any of the playoff games for postseason for the MLS?
Honestly, I probably will. I mean, I know this is pretty decisive, but I do like watching Messi. I think I'm like most people, I don't like the fact that MLS basically broke all roster rules just to give Miami this fake big team, but that doesn't mean I don't like Messi. It's not his fault. I mean, I blame the MLS. So, I want to see Messi go all the way to the cup, but, I don't necessarily want Miami, the team itself, to win.
Right. Well, if it's not Miami winning, it's going to be LAFC. So, would you rather have?
That's worse.
Would you rather have Miami win and finish off this golden course they had this year, or have Dini Bouanga get another trophy and then have LAFC be the golden child of the MLS again? Because I can't imagine Houston or Vancouver have the juice to beat LAFC. Maybe the Galaxy, but they have 5 championships too. Do you really
So
need them having another one?
I'll be honest, maybe it might be better for the league overall if Miami wins.
I do
I
too.
mean, like, for instance, I can't remember the organization, but they ranked MLS as the ninth best league in the world. And like the Champions League in England, so the second tier is like number 13, I believe it was. And in part, that's because of some of the players we started bringing over here. But part of that is also the Messi effect, too. Now, some people might say, okay, well, who cares? That's just stupid ratings. Well, the fact is, though, is that the better league that we have, the more enticing it is for players to come here.
Oh, yeah.
Because let's be honest, if we have a player and they can choose between, I'm making this up, but the Premier League and MLS, we're going to have to pay them 3 times as much to come over here.
Well, yeah.
Because why would they want to, like, if you're a player, you want to play in like the Premier League, or you want to play over in Germany in their top league, or Spain, or whatever. You know what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So it's like the better our league looks, the easier it is to get players over here.
Right.
Easier that it's going to get them to stay here because of, well, we can talk about the psychology, but the anti-American sentiment and stuff like that. But yeah, in some ways, I think it might actually be better if Miami wins.
Well, I think clearly the only team in the East that's going to give them a shot is Columbus.
Yeah.
I think Columbus can beat them because they already have. But yeah, I think I'd rather see Miami. Yeah, I'd definitely rather see Miami win than LAFC, because I don't think Seattle or RSL are going to do it. I think it's just going to be a top heavy playoffs. I think top 2 teams are going to wind up being in the championship and for the cup, and I think it's going to be Miami and LAFC. I think, but that's the final that everyone's going to want to see, and I do think if that's the case, it's gonna. I mean, you've got Messi. He is what he is. So I think that's going to be that. I think we should probably cover the playoffs a little bit too. I think that'll be good, because this is going to be a wild playoffs. I think it's going to be great, and I think it's just doesn't it feel like it's just there for Miami?
Kind of, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
So,
all right, that's it. That's what I got.
All right, Steve. So, obviously, if you guys want to reach out to us, Steve can give you our contact information. And like I said, just look for us. We're probably going to push out some kind of episode where ideally we're shooting for weekly. There might be a week here or there that we miss, especially like around Christmas, New Year, something like that. But you never know.
Yeah, so you can find us on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts. It's BRB Fancast. We're on the Twitter. We try to post pretty regularly on Twitter. We comment on other people's things. You can reach out to us at any of those spots. We also have a website, brbfancast.weebly.com. You can reach us out on there. You'll find our Meet the Reps. You'll find our wallpapers. You'll find some art we do. You can also find us on Instagram occasionally. So reach out to us there. You'll see us on Facebook. We're pretty common on Facebook. We're on as Maze Zipper on Facebook, on all the San Luis City fancast sites. So we're out there. Reach out to us. We want to see you on as well. We're definitely going to have some pretty cool discussions during this off season. But you know what? All for City. I am so damn happy we still have an MLS team, and we have one of the best stadiums in the world, and we're definitely one of the best clubs now. So go City.
Go City.
All righty, baby.